Hello, hello, creatives. Hope you're doing well, staying cool as the summer kind of sinks in, right? Going towards the end of June, and now we are really starting to feel a lot of the summer season happening. So, summer is the perfect time for doing creative things. I don't know, there's something about the season, this time of year, that makes you want to do more creative projects and really dive into that creative flow. So I hope you're checking out different ways to do that for yourself. But speaking of, I want to ask you this question. Are there reasons, or let's call them reasons, excuses, beliefs, maybe perhaps beliefs about what creativity is all about how yourself as a creative person, that come up in your head and keep you from doing something creative? Because what happens is that we're not always aware of these thoughts, let's call them self assessments, self criticism, maybe they're beliefs, like really core beliefs about ourself as a creative person, or what you think a creative person looks like, does. Sometimes we have a laundry list of those excuses and reasons. And sometimes they're valid, right? Because they maybe came from a personal experience you had that was maybe traumatizing around your creativity. Maybe somebody told you you weren't good enough or you weren't creative enough. Maybe somebody decided to really just minimize it as if it was a hobby or an invaluable thing you should not waste your time with, right? Whatever it is. I'm guilty of it. We all are guilty of it. And I do want to go over a few of those beliefs or excuses or reasons because I think all of you could probably relate to this. I think it's pretty typical and normal for creatives to come up with some of these reasons that stops them in their tracks. Sometimes it can stop them so much that they don't even do anything creative, or sometimes it gets in the way of their creative flow, that they can't seem to enter that immersive sort of place of surrendering and letting go of expectations and self judgments so that you could really enjoy the creative process. You know, wherever that is, I'm sure many of you have experienced this. So one of the top reasons is that I have heard before multiple times, and I have thought this in my head, and this goes through my head too sometimes, is I can't come up with anything original, right? Or I don't have an original idea or creative idea. So there's this, around that belief, there's this idea or this pressure that somehow, in order to be creative or do something creative, we have to start from an original idea or an extraordinary idea or a unique idea, right? And this is far from the truth because I want to talk a little bit about, if you think about how long the human race has been here, it's hard to say that you could even come up with something original because I believe that we're all influenced by the things that we see, especially online, Pinterest, the things that we see out there in the world. We're all influenced somehow. So that affects some of our creative ideas. And it's not to say that we're copying each other, but we kind of are. I think it's more like we inspire each other. I also think that it becomes sort of a collective creative imagination. You know, the idea that one person on one side of the world can have an idea and another person on the other side of the world who's never communicated, they have the same idea. There could be a collective, what they call collective consciousness, collective creative imagination. We're all kind of in that same sort of energetic web where we do share ideas with each other, even if we've not met each other. And then with everything that we see now on the internet, because we're so exposed to a lot, it's really hard not to see practically everything that's creative. And especially in the last 5 years, I've seen a huge burst of art making, specifically mixed media on the internet. It was always on the internet, but in the last 5 years, it's become even more and more apparent. So, in my experience, I feel like sometimes I'll look at that stuff and go, gosh, this really, what could I come up with that could even be original? But my point is that, well, let me back up, because part of that belief for me is my training. So when I was in art school, they would really push for us to have an original idea. And one of the exercises to that was they would have us, like if you wanted to do an original logo, they would have us do 100 logos first, like 100 different sketches. And then by the time we got to the 100th, then the belief was, then you're getting into the unique original stuff. Now you're pulling out some original ideas. And part of that was if you flushed out the first 100 logos, ideas, you would be flushing out everything that you've taken in from the world, everything that you've seen and been influenced by. So by the 100th idea, now you're hitting original material. I don't think that you need to be original. I don't think you need to be unique and have some extraordinary idea to allow yourself to be creative. I think you can start anywhere. And what I have taught my students is that if you see something online that you really feel inspired by, maybe it took your breath away, there is nothing wrong with using that as inspiration, using that as an exercise to learn from. And I'm not saying you go and you copy it directly and then you put your name on it and sell it. I say use it as a learning experience. Use it as a way to expose you to a new technique, a new medium, a new way of creating. So what I'm seeing that is maybe a creative idea is how people integrate other ideas or other things that are already out there. So maybe they took a little piece of this from that place, a little bit of this from that place, and then integrated in their own perspective through their own filter, and then that became the original idea. So I guess that's my way of saying there's really no original idea, because we're really picking and pulling and becoming inspired by different things out there. And the original idea or the unique style, your unique style, would be about how you integrated all those different elements and made it look differently. So I think that's more of a realistic perspective, is if you see something you like and feel inspired by, look at it, duplicate it, but run it through your own perspective and run it through your own filters. So a unique style comes from your own preferences, comes from your own perspective, comes from your own angle. Now, what I know for sure is that the more you do something, the more you repeat something, a technique, that is when unique things start to pop up. Like if you're, one of the things I would do is I would start a new technique that I wanted to get to know. And then I had to do it over and over to really master how it was working, like how this medium was working with this medium. And then all of a sudden, as I'm repeating the technique, I would be getting different results. And then I would oh, that's kind of cool. Often it was an accident. So what I'm saying is that allow yourself not just to try it once and, oh, it looked awful. I'm no good at this. Do it over and over and over again and wait for that unique idea to come up. And when I say unique idea, unique way of playing with that technique or unique way of playing with that style. So that's just another way of framing, oh, I don't have an original idea. That's a very common thing, and I get it, but don't allow that to stop you. Another really good reason is when someone says, well, I'm no good at anything creative or artistic. It's almost like maybe they tried it and they didn't get the results that they wanted, or they tried it once and it looked awful, turned out bad. And then they use that as a reason not to afterwards. So it's almost like, the idea is cutting yourself short, not allowing yourself to get uncomfortable with the learning process. So some people would say, I tried it, but I'm no good at it. I've seen this, a really quick way of giving up on things. I tried that, but I was no good at it. But they never allowed themselves to try it 3 or 4 or 5 times. Before you can assess that you're really not good at it, allow yourself to try it 10 or 20 times. Then, if you're really not good at it, you can at least say, I tried it 20 times or 10 times. But when you do it once and you don't like the way it looked, or you felt really uncomfortable or awkward or self-conscious about it, and then you use that one single experience to say, I told you I'm no good at this, or I'm not creative, that's really not giving you the benefit of the doubt, or it's not really giving you a chance to really discover that might be a possibility. So I've seen also that happen with people who they cut themselves off too short and not give themselves a chance. So, that's one of the reasons why I think you really need to allow yourself to have a beginner's mind. Allow yourself to be awkward, self-conscious, uncomfortable, insecure. All of that uncomfortableness is all part of the creative process. And I think part of that is we don't want to be uncomfortable, or we don't want to feel self-conscious. But you kind of have to in order to really see and discover your true creativity. Because I believe that it exists in all of us. We just get in the way of allowing ourselves to discover that. So that's kind of important. And I think that's, something to think about if that is one of the reasons why you haven't done anything creative or artistic. So another really common belief or reason is some people think, well, I just doodle. And that's not considered art making, or that's not really considered being creative. Because they have this idea that doodling is not equal to being artistic, because artistic, or in their mind, being artistic or creative is having this finished masterpiece painting on the wall of, realistic landscapes or flowers or a portrait. We kind of have this idea that is considered art. Now, I think it's important to remember that everything you see in the museum hanging on the wall, anything you see in the gallery being sold, you are seeing the final product. You don't see all the rough sketches, the mistakes, the explorations, the accidents that the artist had to go through. How many drafts or sketches that he or she threw away to get to that landscape. You don't really see the struggle or the challenges that the artist went through, the process of, painting over it. I know that I have had artwork that I would paint over it because I hated it so much. But you don't see all that. You just see this beautiful finished painting on the wall, or drawing, or beautiful ceramics. One of the things about ceramics is that it can take like up to 10, 20 pieces before you get to the masterpiece. And that's my point. that is not what you're supposed to be doing when you're creating. You're not going to get from 0 to 100 or 0 to that hung piece in the wall in the gallery. So I think that's important to think about. The masters, they had their challenges and they had to go through a whole process, maybe years, to get where they got to. So I think it's really important to realize that you're not expected to be, be such a master at what you're doing. You have to expect yourself to kind of go through this ebb and flow of exploring and testing and trying new things. You need to give yourself that permission to do that. So I think that's also important, not to have that expectation that it's got to be this masterpiece and this finished product. And then we come to comparison. Comparison happens when you're trying to compare yourself, stage you're at, your ability, with someone else. Well, I can't draw like that person, or I can't paint like that person. I'm not as creative, or I'm not as good as that person. And I've seen this happen in classes, in the workshops that I've done, where people are so preoccupied with what that other person is doing across the room or the person next to them that they start to shrink. They allow their creativity to shrink. And then they feel like I'm just not it. Everyone else knows what they're doing, or they're really good at what they're doing, and I'm not as good. And then that becomes a reason not to continue to do the art or to continue to be creative, because they continue to compare themselves. It's normal. Number one, I think it's perfectly normal to compare yourself with others. We all do it. But that should not be the reason or the excuse that you don't do it anymore. You don't do the creative thing that you want to do. Because I know what happens is there's this little thing or this little voice in you saying, gosh, I wish I could do that. Or that is so cool. I want to do that. And then, that desire, that dream, that yearning that's coming from your creative spirit. And then all of a sudden it's more like, well, I can't. No, I can't do it as good as that person. Well, what happens if you try it out? What is the worst that can happen if you allow yourself to explore and experiment? And even if it doesn't end up exactly like that person, you're doing it your own way. And the point is that you're doing it. So, my whole point in this episode is that I really want you to think about, do you have a laundry list of excuses, beliefs about yourself and your ability, reasons that have held you back from exploring your creativity, that has held you back from exploring that deep desire to do something creative? I want to really challenge you on that, because if you have a laundry list, I would recommend you write every single one of those down and really challenge each one of them, the reality and the truth of each. Because I would almost say, guarantee that majority of those reasons are sometimes made up in our heads. And like I said, it's the ego, it's the human brain that gets in the way, because the human brain wants to protect you from hurt, frustration, uncomfortableness, right? Failure. I encourage you to not allow a laundry list of reasons to keep you from doing something creative every day and having an art practice. Honor that part for yourself, because we know doing something creative fills our creative spirit, fills our soul, brings joy into our life. Do not allow that laundry list of reasons keep you from doing that or block you. And it really comes down to the only person getting in the way of your creativity is probably yourself. So I wanted to share that with you. Thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, please check out the button, click the button underneath there. And if you prefer listening to this on Apple Podcast, I'm also on iheartradio, whatever platform that you prefer listening to. So check that out as well. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay creative. Bye.